The American Civil War was the most important event in American history. This story is about the key causes, battles, and figures who fought and defined the war and made it so the war defined us forever. The war was fought between the Confederate States of America, which was comprised of southern states that left the United States in 1860 and 1861. On the other side was the United States government as it was, the Union, seeking to rebuild the country. It was the most devastating event in American history. There were more casualties than in any war fought before or since, and it absolutely destroyed the infrastructure, especially in the South, which took decades to recover. The primary cause of the war was slavery. The South felt they were owed the right to own slaves. There was also the issue of states' rights. There was the Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Crittenden Compromise that tried to mend the fences of the South that felt the Union was infringing on their rights to own slaves. Abraham Lincoln's election in 1860 was also a factor, as the South felt he was dangerous and hated their way of life. As you see here, the states in red are the states that seceded, the states in blue are Union states, and the rest are border states. But the primary issue was slavery. The South felt that this hateful ideology was worth going to war over. The first sort of warning shot of the war was in Fort Sumter in South Carolina. People from South Carolina who had seceded from the South attacked a naval outpost in South Carolina that belonged to the Union. The first battle was Bull Run. The Union marched into Virginia hoping to end the war quickly and launch an assault that caught the South off guard. It did not work. They were completely disorganized and suffered an embarrassing defeat. This was the first we saw of Stonewall Jackson, who became a key figure on the side of the South. George McClellan came in and organized the Union Army, and after this, decided to launch the first big attack of the war, the Peninsula Campaign, where he moved his army up the peninsula in Virginia to attack the South. It failed. They were forced to retreat by Robert E. Lee, who then launched an attack of his own, and the Union Army suffered an embarrassing defeat and casualties. The second big battle was Shiloh out west. The Confederates attacked the Union along the Tennessee River. The Union propelled the assault, counterattacked, and advanced into the Mississippi. The battle was the bloodiest battle to date in American history, and there were numerous casualties on both sides. Staying out west was the Battle of Perryville. The South advanced into Kentucky, but was forced back into Tennessee, and the Union held Kentucky for the rest of the war, a key border state. Next, we go right here to our home in Maryland, at Antietam. The Union launched repeated attacks against Robert E. Lee's army. It did not work. Lee used the full force of his army. McClellan refused to use more, and it resulted in a bloody stalemate. It was the bloodiest single day of fighting in American history, and still is. However, the Union was able to claim a symbolic victory, and this led to Abraham Lincoln writing the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves. While it did not actually free the slaves, it made it known that this war was fought over slavery. The Battle of Fredericksburg saw the Union try to race to Richmond before Lee could stop them. However, they were slowed down. Lee cut them off, and the Union again suffered heavy casualties and a massive failure in the Eastern Theater. The Siege of Vicksburg is perhaps the biggest battle of the war. Grant made numerous attempts to try to move in to Mississippi but failed. Once he did, he broke through and attacked with ease, and the Confederacy was cut in half. The Battle of Chancellorsville was a battle out east. It was considered Lee's perfect battle. He cut his army in half and made numerous attacks to go after the Union in success. However, it's considered a Pyrrhic victory, as Stonewall Jackson died, and his death was seen as a turning point in the war. The Battle of Gettysburg is the iconic battle of the war. Lee attempted to attack into Pennsylvania and win the war for the South. However, after failing to grab Culp's Hill on day one, there was a stalemate. James Longstreet, one of Lee's trusted generals, disagreed with his decision to make an attack called Pickett's Charge on day 3. Lee went ahead and did it anyway, and they suffered brutal losses and were forced to retreat. It was the turning point of the war, as the North would now be on the offensive. The Chattanooga campaign fought out east was a push by the Union into Tennessee. The Confederacy was forced to retreat. They lost Tennessee for good, and it set the stage for an attack for the rest of the war. Next, we had the Overland Campaign. This was several attacks by Ulysses S. Grant against Robert E. Lee's army in Virginia. Lee's army managed to hold up against these attacks, but they suffered repeated damages. Grant sought to use his numbers advantage to grind them down. Lee said, "This is not war. This is murder." Next, we had Sherman's March to the Sea. Sherman's March to the Sea saw them destroy Atlanta and Georgia and completely savage the infrastructure of the South. After the Overland Campaign was the Siege of Petersburg. Grant repeatedly attacked and grinded down Petersburg, and Virginia, destroying the Confederacy supply lines and their manpower. As the Confederacy was savaged by these attacks, they met at Appomattox, where Grant accepted Lee's surrender as Lee had no more men or way of fighting. The war was devastating. It inflicted numerous casualties. The lives of many were never the same again. Reconstruction was a hard battle, as many were not ready to see the country come back together. But ultimately, it ended slavery and set us on the road to where we are today, a more freer union.